Hello, it's Adedoyin Jaiyesimi here, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I want to teach on a topic that I get asked a lot about. People are always asking me, what is strategic communications? I want to learn strategic communications. How do I master strategic communications? This is my attempt at a crash course on the things that you really need to know. Some of you may have already watched my bite-sized comms course on strategic communications. This one, let's just say this is going to be like a refresher, or if you haven't even watched it, this is going to be like I hope it will be a quick video because I really want to get into the depth of it, but I don't want it to be too long because there are other videos as well that will give you the information. My hope is that by the time you finish watching this video, you're very, very clear as to how to build your competence in the strategic communications sphere, how to leverage the strategic communications framework, and how to make sure that you are being strategic in your work as a communications professional. So let's dive into it. Start off with definitions. What exactly is strategic communications? Everyone's talking about being strategic. What exactly are they talking about? And I like this definition. There are many definitions, but I like this by Sia. I don't want to murder this name. Papageorgiou. I don't know. I'm not Greek. It sounds Greek. Anyway, that's not the point. So Sia defines strategic communications as a deliberate, structured approach. You can see I've made it in bold. It's deliberate. It can never be haphazard. It can never be, oh, we want to do this. All right, let's go and do press release. Let's go and do a campaign. It has to be deliberate. It has to be structured. So there needs to be some sort of planning involved. And before that planning, there needs to be some sort of thinking. You can't just jump right into it. That means you are being very tactical, right? So it says a strategic communications is a deliberate and structured approach designed to effectively plan, organize and deliver communication for an organization to drive business outcomes. Now, because it says business outcomes does not mean it doesn't apply to you. If you work in the non-profit sector or in public sector, you can put drive organizational outcomes, because everything that we do as communicators needs to drive organizational outcomes, needs to be aligned to what the overarching goals of that organization is. It says here the primary aim is to align communication efforts with the organization's goals and objective and support its overall performance. That's why when they're asking you what those comms bring to the table, you are at the center. You are a critical and integral part to ensuring organizational performance. But if you don't know how to leverage strategic communications, it will be very, very difficult for you to achieve these results that speak to the objectives, that speak to the goals, and that speak to the overarching performance of this organization. So in a nutshell, that's essentially what strategic communications is all about. And I want you to reflect, look at your work. Am I truly a strategic communicator? Am I delivering work that is improving organizational performance? Am I doing work that is making an impact on the results of this organization, either in terms of finance, in terms of market leadership, whatever metrics it is that that organization is measuring? Am I doing work that contributes to the achievement of those objectives? So here's what you can achieve with strategic communications. One, make evidence-based recommendations to senior leaders. It has to be evidence-based. If you're working in a corporate organization, they work with data, they understand numbers. And you see, the gap that we have is because we focus solely on the words, we focus on metrics that business leaders and organizational leaders do not really understand. So a development organization, they're thinking of donors, they're thinking of funders, they're thinking in terms of money. Then you are saying, okay, we got 100 people on social media. They cannot see the correlation. So we need to speak their language, and your recommendations and the things that you're asking them to do has to be based on evidence, has to be based on data, has to be based on some sort of insight. And that's why a lot of work and thinking goes into what we do as communications professionals. The second thing is it helps you to maintain cohesion between internal and external communication efforts. And I see it a number of times with organizations. They're doing well externally, but what they're saying to their internal audience is totally different. It's like two different entities from the internal perspective, and that's not right. When you leverage the strategic communications framework, you will have that alignment and cohesion between what you're doing internally and externally. And really, it's just like your health. You know how they say, you can put all the makeup in the world, you can do all the things on the external, but if internally you're not giving your body the food it needs, it's going to show outwardly, and that's what it is. Your internal actually flows to the external, so you can't be doing so well externally and you're not paying attention to the internal. Strengthen organizational reputation and market leadership, and I've spoken on that before. You can build trust. Look, strategic communications helps you to build trust, and without trust, no organization has the license to operate. And if you don't have the license to operate, that organization ceases to exist. Again, another indicator of how critical the work that we do as communications professionals is. So, through strategic communications, you can build trust with stakeholders using tailored and streamlined communication that speaks to their goals, their needs, and their preferences. And finally, it improves your ability to navigate crisis and emerging risks because you're trend spotting, you're looking at data, you're understanding the context, you're doing environmental scanning, you're giving feedback to the business, to the organization, to the senior leader to say, hey, this is what's going on. Here's how this can impact on our reputation. You're staying ahead of your crisis and issues management framework. All of these things is about being strategic. Is it a lot of work? Yes. And this is the number 1,000,001 reason why communications in an organization cannot be one person's job. Like, this is something that I will keep saying over and over again till I see tangible changes. All right, so let's unpack strategic communications. What are the foundational elements? One, a deep understanding of the organization's needs. What are the needs of this organization? Does this organization need money? Does this organization need influence? Does this organization need new customers? What exactly does this organization need? You have to be very clear, and you cannot sit in your office and determine what the organization needs. And if you've been watching me for a long time, you know that I have everything against a comms professional that is just sitting in the office in their own department, not interfacing with the rest of the organization or business. How are you going to do your work effectively? So you really have to know, and you have to speak to your senior leaders. You have to speak to the CEO. If you're in the entry level, speak to your bosses, but you really need to know what are the needs of this organization, what are the strategic priorities. And if your organization doesn't have, you have to flag it that, hey guys, it's important for us to have it, because everything that the entire organization will be doing will be hinged on that strategic direction and what it is we want to achieve as an organization. The next thing is you need a clear picture of the problem that needs to be solved. What are the gaps? What are the issues? Where will communication come in? And that's number 3, the communication opportunity. But if you don't know what the problem is, if you don't know what the needs are, if you don't know what the problem is, then you're just doing activities that may or may not deliver the results. This is the way you achieve that alignment, breaking it down in this way to be sure that everything that you're doing is meeting a need and solving a problem, because that's where you begin to demonstrate results that truly matter to those stakeholders that will ask you what the comms bring to the table in 2025. And finally, you have clarity on the communication outcomes that will lead to the desired impact, because there are things that are not communication problems. There are things that communications cannot solve or cannot solve alone. So you're very, very clear. You're not just doing things hoping that one of it will stick. You have an idea based on research, based on data, and you begin to bring your solutions. That way you can show that this was the problem, this is how we approached it, this was the strategy, this is how we implemented, and this is the result. That is strategic communication. Anything outside of that, you are actually being tactical, and you most likely will not deliver the result, and you feel that frustration of having to try to defend your value. Not because you are not working hard, but you are not working in a way that is aligning to the organization's goals and objectives. So this is the overview of the strategic communications framework. Now, I teach a 5-week class on this for comms teams. We can spend the last training that I did, we spent 4 days unpacking the strategic communications framework. So I'm just going to do a quick breakdown of each step. But I advise you, if this looks new and you're like, I don't know what's this, please, I'm begging, take a course. We have the Comms Avenue, our strategic communications course. It's coming up in August. SA&A, Shola Abulu and Associate, they also have a 1-day strategic communications course. Do it. CSCE, Center for Strategic Communication Excellence, they have a strategic communications course. You don't have to do mine, but just do a course that gives you the information and knowledge and tools on how to use the strategic communications framework. Very, very important. So this is the overview. You go from a situation analysis, goals and objectives, your stakeholder and audience, messaging, strategy, tactics. Can you see where tactics is? We love our tactics as communicators, and tactics are not bad, but it's just that it's a process. Don't skip and abort the process. If you miss out on the first 4 or 5 things, then you will not be able to show results. So please don't be so quick to rush into tactics. You have your timing and your budget, and you have your messaging and evaluation. So this is my attempt at breaking down what each step involves in a nutshell. So I hope you have your notepad ready. Situation analysis, strategic communication, you have to build it on research, data, and insight. You can't be coming up with things and you have not researched, you have not done some sort of secondary research, you have not done some research on the target audience, you don't even know the landscape, you don't even know the political context, you don't even know what's happening. That's a plan that you are creating will be I'm telling you, highly flawed. There should always be an evidence-based case on why you are adopting a particular strategic approach. And let me tell you something about research and just getting all the data you need. It makes the development of the strategy and the selection of your tactics way easier, because when you're doing the research on trends, you're doing your SWOT analysis, you're doing your environmental scanning, you're doing the PESU, and PESUL is the political environment, the social technological landscape broadly. You will begin to see opportunity areas. You will begin to see gaps. You will begin to see areas of alignment when you truly diagnose the problem. If, for example, the organization, the customer satisfaction levels are going down, you can't decide that, okay, you know what, let's do promo so that our customers will be excited. Now, they will take the promo because who doesn't like free stuff, right? 50% off, 75% off, you do that. But the fact is that if the fundamental problem that caused the lack of customer satisfaction isn't fixed, after that 1 or 2 week of the promo, you go back to the problem. So you need to diagnose, and that's where situation analysis comes from. You need to have a proper understanding of the situation and know, okay, what is the best way to solve this problem? Is it that our customer service people, they are the problems? Is it that the channels, what exactly, is it the product itself, the service, what exactly is? Because you just do something and then you spend money and the problem is still there are no results. And they say, comes, you spent all the money, no results. Meanwhile, it was not a communication problem, or it was not a problem that communication alone could solve, because we didn't do our research. Please, I'm spending time because I really want you to see, if you're creating communication strategies and plan without any kind of research, don't do it. Don't do it. I think that every time you want to do it, you hear my voice saying, don't do it. Don't do it. But really, you need to establish what is going on. Why is this thing happening? With whom? Be probing, be able to probe. That way you have insights that can inform whatever strategic direction you want to use for your communications plan. Next thing, goals and objectives. Please do not confuse your goals and the objectives. Now, goals are usually broad, high-level statements of what the organization wants to achieve, or what you even want to achieve as a communication team, but it's very broad, very high-level. But you say the objective, it now becomes very specific. It has to be measurable, and it outlines how that goal wants to be achieved. So, for example, we want to create interest in a new product. That's broad. So how exactly will you do that? So if you now want to break it down in your objective, you will now be specific. Do we want to increase preference for our product by 50% amongst Gen Z within 4 months? That is being measurable, being very specific. Your good objective, and I have a video on objective setting. So a lot of the content where I already have videos, what I would do is that in the caption, I will put the link to those videos so that you can watch it after this, after you watch this. But good objectives need to be smart. So they have to be specific, they have to be measurable, achievable. Hey God, I can spend the whole day talking about this. Some of us, we set objectives that are not achievable, like they're not realistic and then time bound. So make sure it's smart. Your objectives have to be linked to your organization's goals and objectives. I think I've said that before. It's very, very important. If what you are doing, so for example, the organization, let's go to the example of the new products. You want to create that preference. You want to get people buying the product, and they're targeting women, and your activity is focused on platforms that only Gen Z go to. correct. That's a correct misalignment. You have to be singular in your objective, focused on one thing per objective. Some of you want to put awareness, understanding, preference, sale in one objective. How are you going to measure it? You will lump up all your stakeholders in one objective. How are you going? It's going to be a headache for you to measure it. So you want to break it down, which is why you, again, because when you do the first bit, which is the research and the measurement, when you come to your setting of your objective, you can then prioritize top 3 and top 4, because you will know, okay, let us focus on this target group. Let us focus on this objective, because this objective will have the ripple effect on these other things that we want to achieve. But if you don't do your research, if you don't do that groundwork, you may not be able to see those connecting dots. Now, your objective should be framed in the context of the final outcomes to be achieved. If it is sales, you have to be able to link it. How much in sales do we want to bring in? How much in terms of lead conversion? So if, for example, you're saying you're going to bring young people, you're going to do experiential events, what is that going to do? Start thinking about it. Think about the outcomes, because that is what the organization wants to see. And I will talk more on outcomes. Have the potential. Your objectives must have the potential to be evaluated at the end of the implementation process. So don't go and put objectives that you can't measure it. There's no tool for you to measure. You are just going to be shooting yourself in the foot. So back to the point about outcomes. Your communication plan and activities should broadly have the following outcomes. Usually, what communication impacts on in terms of outcomes is one, awareness. Do people know about this product? Now, I can further segment awareness into awareness and understanding, because depending on whatever you are pushing forward, whatever it is you want to achieve, awareness is different from understanding. I can be aware of something, but I may not understand the benefit. I may not understand why it is useful for me, but I'm aware that it exists. I'm aware that people use it. So don't fall into this trap of awareness, because that's one of the first things we usually write in our objective, awareness. You really have to ask, what exactly do I want to achieve here? Is it awareness, or I want to achieve understanding? Is it awareness, or what I want is preference? I want them to choose my product. You are again breaking it down so that you are very, very clear, and that objective can lead to the final outcome. So there's awareness, which is you're making people aware of something. It focuses on information or knowledge, and it impacts on understanding, but it does not mean the same thing. The next thing is attitude and opinion. Your communication can change attitude, it can change opinion, it can change perception. And so you're looking at getting people to form a particular opinion on attitude about a particular subject, how people react to the information, and it has to do with interest. So you want to spur interest, you want to spur acceptance. There may be rejection. Rejection can do with, if you're doing a campaign to stop a negative behavior, people to stop smoking, for example, you want them to change their attitude to smoking. So that is the next one. The next one, or the third one, is behavior. This is the hardest, because as my Nigerian people will say, human beings have coconut head. Behavior change, it's a long game. It's the hardest to achieve, it's the hardest to measure, but it's not impossible. And this is you trying to get people to act in a desired way, and in promoting a desired response that involves action. So you usually go from awareness, attitude and opinion, and behavior. Your objectives need to have 1, 2, or 3 of these outcomes, but it has to be focused on outcomes. It can't just be people came for an event. Okay, they came, and so what? Or we want to create a group on Facebook with 10,000 members. Okay, great. What happens after that? Outcomes. Very, very, very important. Now, how do you go from business need to objectives? I got this example from the GCC study guide. I will talk more about it when I get to the resources portion of this video. But the business need is the reason why you're communicating. Remember, I spoke about the need of the organization. And so for this example, it says to reduce the number of safety incidents across the organization's manufacturing plant. So this is an organization that has had a lot of safety problems within the organization, and they want to leverage communications to reduce the number of safety incidents. So what is the business objective? That's what the business is responsible for achieving. It says reduce work-related industries across the organization's 5 manufacturing plants by 25% by the end of Q2. Can you see how specific, and you can focus? That's the word, is so focused. Now, if this is the business objective, what then can communication do in terms of supporting the business to achieve? Because communications alone cannot achieve this, but here's what communications can do: increase employee understanding of the organization's manufacturing safety protocols and procedures from 75% to 90% by the end of 2025. And this is very easy to measure, because before you start whatever campaign or activity that you want to do, you have to measure the level of understanding. You measure it by surveys, internal surveys, and polls, and you can use both quantitative and qualitative data. Harvest qualitative and quantitative data to get a number to know, okay, this is where it is. And then by the end of 2025, you conduct another survey, you conduct another poll to know, okay, what is the level of understanding? And in between that period, you're also going to be measuring the outcomes. So we've released, or we've put out these campaign or this in communication about the safety protocols and procedures. Is it changing behavior? Is it changing? So again, if we go back to this, we've created awareness. Is it changing people's behaviors? Is it changing their opinions? Is it changing the way they speak about safety? Those are the things you begin to measure in the interim, because remember, behavior is a long-term thing, right? So that's an example of how you go from business need to communication objectives. You can see how very, very strategic it is. Look, working as a communications professional, I love it, but it involves a lot of thinking. And I think my biggest frustration sometimes is engaging with professionals that are not thinking. I'm like, you got to think. You have to think. If you don't think, you're not going to get the results, right? So let's move on quickly. Stakeholder and audience. Now I'm going to try and do a separate video, though I do have a video on stakeholder and audience analysis in my bite-sized comms course, but I think I really want to focus on the analysis part of it. So maybe I will do an additional video. But really, a stakeholder is anyone that has a stake or interest in your organization or your business, the operations. You may know them, you may not know them. They may be active, they may be passive, but they can affect or be affected by your organization's actions, objectives, and policies. And this is why social listening is so important. You really need to know what are the people saying, get the pulse of the conversations relating to your organization, because you may have a stakeholder that is not in your typical. So these are the examples that we have: your typical customer, government, media, shareholders, donors. You might have a group that falls out of this, but because they don't fall here, you don't pay attention to them, and they do something that then eventually leads to a crisis for your organization. So you want to make sure that you are really paying attention to the narrative, the conversations that's going around in terms of what people are saying concerning your organization. And your target audience, those are the groups of people that you intend to pass a particular message to. So it's important for you to segment, and there's so many ways that you can segment: demographic, psychographic, based on needs. I usually say, don't try to lump people up and say women in their 30s to their 50s, because there's a lot going on in that mix. So you really want to do micro segmentation to make sure that you are understanding their specific need and preferences. And why that's equally important is for your messaging. You need to create tailored messaging. So you will have your overarching core messages, right? But how you deliver those messages to the different stakeholder and target audience groups that you have identified will be very different. What will appeal to Gen Z may not appeal to the millennial. What will appeal to the older men may not appeal to the younger women. So you have to be very specific, and that comes from doing the analysis work. The analysis work is a lot. Like when I do this as a workshop with comms team, we can literally spend a whole day breaking down, identifying the stakeholders, listing them, then mapping them using the influence interest map, and then analyzing them. And then we come to the messaging, no field, and we now have to create a message. Oh, it's a lot of work. So again, anyone that tells you what comes, bring it to the table. I hope that you can articulate with some of these things that this is exactly what goes into what we do. So you really want to be able to identify what exactly do we want the stakeholder or audience to know, feel, and do as a result of the messaging that they receive from us, as a result of this communication. So you frame your messaging from the context of what is important to them. It's not about you. It's not like when people say that people don't care about what you know until they know that you care. Something is that quote. That's exactly what it is. They don't really care about you. It has to be from their own perspective. And beyond your overarching messages, you need to have targeted messaging for each identified stakeholder, because that's where your messaging begins to resonate and stick. And then you get to your strategy. Now, again, this is a crash. It's a crash course, but I hope that you're getting valuable information from all that I'm sharing. So your strategy is the overall approach that you want to take that will get you from where you are to where you want to be. And it must always be backed by data. It cannot be vibes. And look, There are some times that I'm working on a brief and I have a hunch. I kind of know. I just sense, I share this every time that I pray over everything that I do. And sometimes in the place of prayer, I just have this strong knowing that this is the direction that I need to take. But I don't go to my clients and say, clients, I just prayed and I believe this is the direction. I have to hinge that intuition, that knowing, that conviction on something tangible, some sort of data, some sort of insight. I need to be able to back it up. Remember, evidence based recommendations. And that's what I always do. So think about where we are now. How are we going to get to where we want to be? And this is how I like to break down the strategy, because sometimes people are like strategy. So the objective is the destination. Where exactly are we going? Mauritius, the Maldives. I want to go to the Maldives. Amen to that. But yeah, that's the destination. The strategy, how will you get there? Are you going to use a flight? Are you going to use a car? Are you going to walk? That is your strategy. What is the vehicle? So, in terms of communication, is this an influencer strategy? Is this a multi channel strategy? Is this media relation strategy? What exactly is the strategy? Sometimes it's a combination of different things, right? But you have to be very, very clear. Then you go to your tactics. What needs to be done towards preparing and achieving your strategy? So we are going to the Maldives. We've decided that we want to take a flight. Ain't nobody walking to the Maldives. You have to book your ticket. You have to pack your suitcase. You have to commute to the airport. You have to check in. So, same thing. If you say we want to do an influencer strategy, what do we need to facilitate that? Okay, we're going to create this. We're going to select our influencers. We're going to do these activities and bring those influencers. Now break it down. But you see, there has to be this. I wish I had an illustration here, a loop. Objectives must link to the strategy, must link to the tactics, and that is what will help you to deliver your outcomes. So if you forget everything that I've said today, please don't forget this one. That linkage, that is where strategic communications is. That is where you are doing work that is high level thinking, high level results. So, in a nutshell, your strategy is how you will achieve an objective, and your tactics are what you will do. So, let us look at an example. Objective: establish company X, or establish your company as one of the top 10 market leaders within the sector in 1 year. That is a smart, measurable objective. How would I measure it? My starting point, where are we now in terms of market leadership? Maybe we are position 24. That is my baseline. I record it. And I'm trying to do this within 1 year. So I'm also looking at within my sector. I'm not facing other sectors. It's my own sector, whether it's real estate, whether it is finance, right? And then my strategy. I want to position my company as the industry voice of authority. I said, okay, you know what? To become a market leader, I want people to see us as being an authority. People begin to talk about us as an authority. People begin to recognize us as an authority. And because I have done my research, I see that that authority, ability to occupy that authority position, would help us to increase our market leadership. Let's just assume, those are making assumptions, because market leadership is not just based on that, but it's one of the things, right? And then I go to my tactics. So what will we do? We'll have research based reports. We will do thought leading blog content, media interviews, speaker platforms, industry forums, anything that puts us as the go-to for content, information, high level, authoritative content in this industry should be us. And that is it. So you can see, very, very clear, but this requires a lot of thinking. And then your tactics. So this is called the Pizzo model. So it's paid and shared and owned media. Again, I have a video on this, so I'm not going to go into it too much. It's by Spin Sog Jeannie Dietrich. She's the one that did it. Very, very great. So if you are stuck on tactics, just open the Pizzo model and see. But again, you can't just have it just haphazardly. It has to be hinged on something. It has to be hinged on these are the insights, these are the data, or this is the data backing the selection of these tactics. So you want to use this framework. And then your timing and your budget. It helps to have a visual calendar to ensure that everything happens when it's supposed to, especially when you're doing activities that run for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. Have like a literal calendar. Some people use a Gantt chart. Because again, I interface with multi-dimensional teams. Some people Gantt chart is too complex for them. But a calendar, like a normal calendar that you will have, it just get one and use it and put it on a Microsoft Doc or PowerPoint and then impute the activities. Very, very simple. But you can do more complex calendars, but just make sure that you have a visual representation of the timeline and then your budget. I know this is where we used to fight with finance, but you have to think about, who do I need to implement this? If you're saying influencer strategy, please go and get their rates. Are you going to need a content creator? Are you going to need an external consultant? What are the materials you will need? Do you want to build, you want to do a podcast? Are you outsourcing that, or you want to build a podcast studio in your organization? You need to know the equipment. You need to know all of this and factor in the cost, because you can't create your budget. And then when you're now implementing, you realize, oh, we need to buy this, we need to buy that. And that begins to impact on, maybe the budget was even slashed in the first place. You now realize, oh, we didn't factor in X and Y costs. That's not good. Now, the final thing is measurement and evaluation. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I have a video on measuring the impact of your communication activities and also a video in the Bite-Size Comms course. But I always recommend Jane McNamara and imec.org. Anything regarding measurement, please, those just bookmark. So there is on the AMEC website, and I've shared this previously, I'll probably put the link again here. There's the MEL manual. Just study, just sit down, study that manual. That manual, they now have a taxonomy of metrics. So beautiful. It breaks down the different activities that you do, the different metrics that you can measure, and then how you can measure the metrics at what stage. Very brilliant document. Some people have done the work. You just need to sit down and read it. But this is an example of how you go from input, activity, output to you can see the outcomes here: short term, medium term, and the impact. What are the metrics that you can begin to measure at each point? So you see, when you focus on impressions, social media likes, that's you focusing on your output. You're not speaking to the outcomes. You're not speaking to what effects did this have, or your long-term outcomes, because short-term is outtakes. You're not speaking to increased awareness. So you can see it here, medium and long-term. So let me differentiate. So short-term outcomes, which are called outtakes, is, okay, we've put content on social media. How many people liked? We've put this thing on our website. How many people visit? So you can see here, the metrics are website visits and views, likes and shares, retweets. All of these things are important because they're the ones that will lead you here. But you stop here. That's the problem. Don't stop here. What is the outcome, medium and long-term outcome? Because these two things are what your organization cares about. Was there increased awareness? Did it increase inquiries and requests for the product or service? Was there improvement in stakeholder satisfaction? Did it improve reputation? Did it improve trust? Was there change in behavior? Those things, attitude, opinion, all of those things. And you can see here, how do you measure? Survey data, interview data, net promoter score, trust index. Again, that taxonomy of metrics has more than this. So please use it and make sure that you go end to end in the strategic communications framework. Now, when I when I run comms teams through this, like, oh my God, especially when we do our course, this is a lot. Yes, it's a lot, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Now, when if I do a 5-day workshop so let me use the last workshop that I did. At the end of day 5, we needed to create a harmonized work plan, and we went through the strategic communications framework literally in 4 days. Was my brain on fire on Friday? Of course, I think I spent like 3 days sleeping. But the truth is that it becomes faster. You know what to look out for. You know the sources where you need to check. It just, again, by reason of use, it becomes easier. But if you don't begin to use it now, then it becomes tedious. So commit to it. Is long. Yes, there is a process. There's some things that, it takes time. But you see, the time is cut short when you develop mastery. So I really want you to develop mastery in the use of the strategic communication framework. So just to wrap up, optimizing for success. If you want to achieve success in strategic communications, you need the ability to diagnose and propose the appropriate solutions that are data-driven. Let me tell you something about just being able to do this. I find that just opening my mind, listening to the news, being curious, being aware. So maybe because by virtue of the fact that I work and interface with organizations across multiple sectors, industries, it helps me to broaden my scope of reference, and that really, really helps me. I learn a lot on the job. I'm learning a lot of my eyes are being open. I'm able to connect the dots better and faster. So listen to the news, be curious about what's happening in other industries. Just go for their events, go for their summits. or you can just attend their webinar. Sometimes one thing that I do is I allow my friends to talk about what they do to me. I have friends that I have what they're doing. I'm like, okay, your work confuses me, but keep talking about it because it's just expanding my scope of and my frame of reference. And that leads to the next point: critical thinking to connect the necessary dots. You have to really think. See, there is a lot of thinking. A lot of thinking. Okay, this organization has this problem. Why does this problem exist? Okay, will this lead to the answer if we adopt approach A versus approach B, and then you're doing A/B testing in your head. Okay, then you're trying to see. It's a lot of thinking, but it helps you to achieve success. Contextual application of the strategic framework. Now, this strategic framework applies whether you work in the corporate sector, non-profit, public sector, but the outcomes are different. Certain things about the framework, you will need to contextualize it to your own setting, to your own sector, and to your own organization. But the general process still applies. And finally, you have to be able to work with data to spot trends and to be able to glean insight. I can do another video on just data, your ability to in fact, if you are diligent about collating your website metrics, for example, collate all of that data. And some of these things is manual on an Excel sheet, month on month. If you want to do week on week, let's even say month on month, you put that data, you put your social media data, then maybe you get the data from the sales. So like the CRM data that they have, you might start spotting correlations. That's the thing about data. If you can collect it over a period of time, it shows you a lot. Like you will be so wowed that a spike in sales correlates with a spike in website visits as a result of something that you did on social media. But because you were not tracking, sales will now take all the credit. They will now say, comes, you not bring money. Meanwhile, it was the activity from social media that led to the website, that led to the spike. You can begin to see the correlations with the data. But anyway, I will leave it there. But yeah, here are some valuable tools. So data gathering, Google, start with Google. There's a lot on Google. If you have the patience, see, there are sometimes I go to page 12 on Google and I'm not exaggerating. I found, see, the things that I found on Google through patience and just changing my keywords is wild. Like, really, you want to do surveys and polls, audience interviews or focus groups, and then your secondary research, reading reports, industry reports, technical reports. I read technical reports. Last or 2-3 weeks ago, I was reading a full blown report on migration. A lot of things that I was seeing, I was like, what exactly is this? But I was just reading, and it was so helpful for the work that I was doing. In terms of measurement, there's a lot more. You want to use SurveyMonkey. I like to recommend SurveyMonkey. You can use Google Forms. There's Typeform. I like SurveyMonkey because of the analysis that it does. It's a paid platform. Google Analytics, your social media analytics. See, there's data in the back end of your social media that some of you are sleeping on that data. It's so eye-opening. Even Bitly, it's anyway, let me just leave it. Manual count and log. So manual count is number of people that attend your event. When you're having events, when you're having in-person engagement, when you're people working, how are you collecting this data? Those are things that help you to measure. Those are things that help you to articulate, hey, comms is working. The logs, your Excel sheets, are you logging those data? Are you logging the numbers? Are you seeing the difference it is making? So we've done this activity now. We want to know if more people are working in. If we are not tracking the working figures, if we don't know what the working figures were before, what they are now, and then see it over like a 3, 4, 5 month period, how will we know that what we're doing is working? So yeah, you really need to be able to log some of these things. Social listening and media monitoring, Google Alerts. I have Google Alerts for my name. Any people that was saying anything about me on the internet, I get an email. You should have Google Alerts for your brand, your organization, your own personal name. Because in fact, I can't even tell you that sometimes I'll get an email like, "Well, who is writing what about me?" It's so interesting. But that and it's free. Once you have Google account, it's free. It really helps you. Brand 24, I really, really love Brand 24, but there are others. There's Meltwater, but it's costly. Brand 24 is also paid, but I get away with using the free version. And sometimes, depending on the client, I can put it in my fee and then pay for it. So again, if it's something that your organization really needs, then make a case for it. You can use Hootsuite. There's so many social media listening tools, media monitoring tools. Make sure you're listening to them. Track conversations about your business. Track your hashtags. Just track. what's happening, because again, that is data, that is information, that is also helping you to stay ahead of in terms of like issues management. And then you have things like coverage book really helps you to bring all the different data and put it in some sort of nice report. Talk worker, look, there's so many tools, but these are just some of it. My approach to tools, I love to experiment a lot because I find that there is no one size fits all tool. Some people, you are looking for the tool that will do everything. It does not yet exist. Maybe in the future it will, but right now it doesn't. So if you are very clear on what exactly it is that you want to measure, then you can play around with different tools to harvest the data that you need. And finally, resources. I'm recommending these three books. I have read them. I don't recommend things I have not read. I'm recommending them because they're very, very good. They will give you a crash course in strategic communication, and you can have it as a go-to reference material. The first is the official GCC study guide. This is $50, but honestly, it is worth it. It is for the CMP or SCMP certification. That's the communication management professional or strategic communications management professional. But don't say, I don't want to do the exam. Just if you can buy it and read it. It is, like I said, it's like a crash course in everything that I've told you, and it can be a reference material. So for those of you that this is new to you, you're trying to build your competence, try and get this material. And it is in soft copy. So if you can afford it, just buy it. And you don't have to think about the hassle of delivery because none of these are African books, right? The second is the IABC guide. Again, it's just like the GCC study guide, but it has more competency based areas. Please, if you can't buy it, so you can, me, I have the three. You can be like me, or you can say, look, Adedoyin one. I would say start with this. If you can expand to this. If you can expand further, expand to this. But it's a really, really good book. It condenses the key things you need to know. And why I like this IABC guide also talks about structuring your communications team, building capacity, all of those things. Very, very great. Now this, I know it says planning and managing public relations campaigns, but honestly, you can see there a strategic approach. So it's more strategic public relations, and there are a lot of synergies with everything that I've said. Like I said, I've read it, and what they are putting there is essentially the strategic communications framework, but they are speaking from the angle of PR, and the CIPR is more focused on strategy. So very, very good book. This, I ordered it from Amazon. This, I also ordered it from Amazon. This, that's the official study guide that is available on the GCC website, and I will put the link if you can get it. Fingers crossed. I also want to be able to speak to some of these associations and these great authors to give us a discount so that for the Comms Mentorship Conference. And maybe I should talk about the Comms Mentorship Conference at this point. So on Saturday, 26th July, I'm going to be hosting the first Comms Mentorship Conference. So nervous, but then it's exciting as well. And the idea really is that we bring senior industry experts that will just come to answer your question. And honestly, I didn't even want to call it a conference because it's not one of those things where people are just talking and talking at you. It's really them answering your questions, either questions you put in the Google form or Slido or ask on the day. They're just really answering the questions that you have. And what I'm also trying to do is I'm trying to build a resource bank that every participant can have at the end of the conference. So it's going to be in person in Lagos. And for those that are outside of Lagos and Nigeria, it's going to be streamed live on YouTube. So let's make this fun. Let's make this amazing. And why I brought it up, because I was speaking about the GCC guide and the other resources. I really want to approach some of these people to say, hey, for the purpose of this conference, are you willing to give copies of this for free or give it at a discount? Because I want that at the end of that conference, as much as you have your questions answered, you're able to access some of these resources. Because let's think about it, $50 in Naira is a lot of money. So that's what I'm thinking about. So pray for me. It's going to be exciting. I should have put the information on these slides. It just came to me that, I could actually talk about it. But I will put the link. It's www.commsmentorshipconference.com. And then you can sign up to attend in person or virtually. But yeah, I'm totally looking forward to it. Before then, however, feel free to ask me any questions you may have about strategic communications. You can visit my website. There's a lot of content there. There's a lot of content on my YouTube channel. Follow me on LinkedIn, and then the Substack, which is the mentorship channel. So the Comms Mentorship Conference is coming under the umbrella of the Comms Mentorship Circle, which I launched this year to provide mentorship to young African professionals. And on Substack, every Thursdays by 7 p.m. West African time, I'm there live answering questions. So again, we can have a full-blown conversation every Thursday on strategic communications, but my goal really is to equip you to do amazing work that you would always, always be proud of. So thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye.